What do most Fortune 500 executives have in common? They learned important lessons on the fields and courts of their high school and collegiate sports teams. This is true for both men and women. Ernst & Young found that a whopping 94% of women holding a C-suite position played sports. Their wins and losses shaped their habits and who they would become. Join me on my journey to sit with some of the brightest executives in the world as we discuss how sports shape their professional trajectory. In partnership with Chief Executive Magazine, the voice of America's CEO community, I'm your host, Don Yeager, and this is Corporate Competitor Podcast. With me for today's episode is Carl Liebert. Carl has 30 years of experience leading top companies across multiple industries, including AutoNation, 24 Hour Fitness, The Home Depot, Circuit City, and USAA. He grew up in Fort Knox, Indiana, and went on to play basketball at the U.S. Naval Academy. And in 1986, his midshipman went all the way to the Elite Eight in the NCAA basketball tournament. His basketball experience taught him valuable lessons about working with people that he uses today as the CEO of Keller Williams KWX.
Never make two mistakes in a row. So simple. If you play the game, you're going to miss a shot. That's the first mistake. Your second mistake is when you look over to your coach or you put your head down, hustle back and make a play on defense. I make 1,000 mistakes a day as a CEO. The question really is, am I surrounded with enough people that are going to help my mistakes be minimized? And I seldom went to where I wanted to go, but always somehow ended up where I needed to be.
Carl, thanks for joining us.
Don, it's great to be here. I've heard so much about you, and your show is legendary, and I'm just honored to be included today with you. So thank you.
Well, there's just so much to learn, and I'm going to share, we have some Indiana roots in common. I went to high school and college up in Indianapolis, but you're downstate, Floyd's Knobs, small town, Southern Indiana. You love the game, basketball, as most Hoosier boys do, or Hoosier children do, right?
Yeah.
Tell me about your first experience with the game.
Well, it goes way back. My father was a college athlete. He went to New Albany High School and then later got recruited to go to U of L and played for University of Louisville and Coach Dromo. So you could say I grew up in a little bit of a basketball family. I'm the oldest. From the day I remember walking, we had a hoop out back. My dad was notorious about making sure I understood the game and spent a lot of time teaching me the history of Hoosier basketball. I still remember at the Naval Academy when I came home and Hoosiers had just come out. The first week, my dad said, "Let's hop in a car. I'm going to take you to all those gyms." I played in those gyms growing up. You need to go to all those places, and went down to Jasper, and of course we played in Seymour in the regional. But we were really, really close, and we spent a lot of time out on the back court. And until I met my wife, who was my next door neighbor when she moved in and when she was 12, my dad was my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
So we spent a lot of time after work imagining I was Rick Mount or thinking about Junior Bridgman playing for East Chicago, Washington, and winning the state championship, all those legendary names in the state. And then, of course, you couldn't leave without having Kaywood Ledford have a Kentucky IU game where he was calling the game. So he wanted me to make sure that while I was improving and becoming a basketball player, that I understood and respected those who had come before that had created it.
Mm.
Basketball has just been a part of my life since I can remember, Don, growing up in Indiana and all the high school games that you could ever go to. And from that standpoint, I can't remember not playing the game of basketball from the time I could walk.
What I love about that was that your dad wasn't just teaching you the game. He was teaching you the history of the game, which gives you just an appreciation. It's not just about putting a ball in a hoop. It's about who'd been there before you.
Yeah, and he was great about that. It was a special time during the Final Four or the final game. I was rooting because the 76 Hoosiers were that perfect squad with Kent Benson and Scott May. And,
Yep.
I think the 75 team was really better, but the 76 team went undefeated and won. And I had all these emotions going through me. So I had to root for Baylor against Gonzaga.
When you have Scott Drew and you have the
Yeah,
whole, Valpo.
Valparaiso connection. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes, it was a beautiful night. So the Hoosiers' 76 record remains intact, which is what we like.
Yeah. So you play at Floyd Central in high school,
Mhm.
and you had a great team. Senior season, 20-6. You ended up at the final game of the Terre Haute Semi-State, and in Indiana, back in the day, you and I were there in high school, they played one class basketball. So it didn't matter how big you were, how small you were, everybody competed for the state championship. Tell me what that concept of that playing in one class basketball meant for you.
John, it was really special for me because it's a strange story, but my junior year of high school, I played junior varsity as a junior.
No kidding.
I only averaged about a quarter a game in the varsity, and coach really wanted me to get a lot of experience. I was a late bloomer. I grew late. And he said, I'd rather you play 3 full quarters in the JV game than to come off the bench in a varsity game because I think you're going to be ready to play in your senior year. Well, the summer before my senior year, suddenly I went from this JV basketball player to third team All State preseason over the summer, and nobody had ever heard of me. So by the time we got to sectional and regional, our regional game was just against New Albany. I think I had 24 points, 24 rebounds in the morning game.
Oh my gosh.
And then we roll into Terre Haute to play in Holman Arena at the time, and we lost against Washington. And Craig Noodles Neal, who went to Georgia Tech and went on to be an NBA coach,
Yep.
he had one of the Bucci brothers on that Washington Hatchet team, which was really special. And I think I ended up with 28 rebounds, set semi-state record, and we lost 71-70. So it didn't really matter how many personal records you had. You lost that game.
Right.
4 out of our 5 starters fouled out that game. I was the only one who didn't foul out. It felt like I was playing at Rupp Arena against 7 people. The officials were playing for Washington Hatchet at that day too. So
Yeah, you're not still carrying any of that, are you? Right? There's
no,
nothing about that that's still in your craw.
yeah, yeah. But it was magical and right out of Indiana basketball lore, and forever thankful for that opportunity.
That's the beauty of sports, that you can recall those kind of things about a moment that occurred, a year or two ago. That opportunity allows you to grow as your coach holding you back and getting you that senior season. And then that opportunity blossoms both academically and athletically. You blossom into a candidate to play at the U.S. Naval Academy.
Mhm.
Tell me about choosing Navy.
So my high school coach is in the Indiana Basketball Hall of Fame. So Coach Hinton,
Wow.
I think he won 600 plus games over his career. And our junior year, we had to do a spring sport after basketball. So a lot of us ran track because he was the women's track coach and he could keep track of us out there. And I was supposed to be on the high jump, but he came over and handed me a letter from the Naval Academy. I'm like, the Naval Academy? Like, really? He said, yeah, they loved your SAT scores. And I took a lot of honors classes. I remember going home and my dad opening up the little World Book encyclopedia and said, "Oh, the Naval Academy." I went to a consolidated small town high school. No one in my high school had ever gone to a service academy, let alone been recruited to play basketball to go to service academy. My dad just kind of encouraged me to explore it. And my guidance counselor, who just passed away last month,
Mm.
Carolyn Hendricks, I remember vividly just kind of hanging around the lockers early in my senior year. And she just kind of pointed at me and she said, come to my office. You're going to get all your paperwork filled out for the Naval Academy because that's where you should go. It turned out to be a great place and the right place for me. And I'm so thankful for so many of my teachers that saw something in me that maybe I didn't see in myself at that time. And I'm forever fortunate for that happening.
But your good fortune wasn't just that you got to go to the Naval Academy. You got to go to the Naval Academy where there was this guy there on the team who I think when he entered the Naval Academy was only 6'7", right? 6'6", 6'7".
Yeah.
But he grew a little bit,
Yes, sir.
right? NBA first ballot Hall of Famer
Yeah.
by the name of David Robinson. Unbelievable. And you got Vernon Butler. You just had this talent. So you entered at like the right time if you wanted to really not just go to the Naval Academy, but to compete on that team. What was it like to be around that level of talent suddenly? I mean, you come from Floyd Central to now you're there in the presence of future superstars.
It was overwhelming. I failed to recognize what it's like to go to a service academy and take on the academic load at that level and take on a basketball sports load. I'm not sure I was ready to be a Division I player when I got there. The coaches saw some things in me, and I remember Doug Wojcik turned out to be probably the best point guard ever play at Navy. He's an assistant for Tom Izzo at Michigan State. He's been a head coach, and they put both he and I on the JV team our freshman year. So we were started on the JV program at Navy. We played against Oak Hill Academy, Fourth Union, and we played a really great schedule. Played every game. We went undefeated. So I didn't, our freshman year, have a chance to compete with David and Vernon and Kyler and many of the great players on our team. But Doug and I played 40 minutes a game over in the adjacent gym against some incredible talent, a lot of fifth year high school players that were getting ready to go play major college. And it was incredibly helpful as we entered in our sophomore year, where Doug became the starter point guard and I became the sixth man. So I came from the JV program to being sixth man. And then we get to the NCAA tournament and we beat LSU in the first round. And then we come within an eyelash of beating Maryland and Lynn Bias and Adrian Branch in Dayton, which was close to Indiana. So I think I had half the tickets for that
For the
game.
team.
Everybody drove up from Floyd's Knobs. Yeah. So that was when we woke up and we realized just how good we could be. We just felt we had a really good chance in 1986 to do something great. It was a lot of fun, but it was a little bit scary at that time as well.
So there's a really good parallel there. Your high school coach said, I'd rather you go play JV, get more time and get better as opposed to being elevated onto a team. At Navy, same thing, essentially, right?
Yeah.
Go get better here so that you can be better where we are today. That takes great leadership to be able to present that to someone and suggest to them that that's the proper path. But it also takes a real open soul to be able to hear that and follow that path. What did you learn that would help you later as a leader about the way your coaches encouraged you to learn at a certain level so that you can prepare and be better as opposed to coming in and just getting beat up all the time on the varsity?
Right. Well, in life, we all are role players. Would you rather be a star on a losing team or be a role player on a winning team? And for me, it was understanding my role and what my talents would be and what contributions we could bring. It takes both sides, right? It takes a coach who's willing to sit a player down and be honest, like, hey, I see lots of potential in you, but you need experience. You need to play more. You need to get stronger. You need to get in the weight room and those kind of things. As a player, you've got to say, okay, they have my best interest in mind. I'm going to take that and then I'm going to go to work and I'm going to do something about it. When you get to where you want to go, you want to be successful at where you get to. You don't want to just get there really quickly and then flame out. So my dad always said, you want to have a really strong foundation so that when you get to where you really want to be, you can perform at that level. Sometimes that means you have to take things a little slower and learn, do well and work hard. And then when you get to that place where it's the one you've always wanted to be, you're prepared to succeed at that point.
Yeah. As a leader, you go on and now you've established yourself. Your credentials are off the charts. Is there a moment where you maybe had to have that same hard, honest conversation with someone working with you that was like, here's how I think we can help you develop into the person you could ultimately become,
Well, it's come to life in a lot of ways, right? Leaders make others better.
right?
Leaders can let you fail, but not let you be a failure. I'm fortunate enough that I've got 13 CEOs that either worked with me or for me along the way that are now running companies. And I'm thankful for the fact that one, they were always coachable, which means they showed up and they trusted me that I could either put them in the right position to be successful or help them along the way because we saw an enormous amount of potential in them. And several of them are Fortune 50 company CEOs today. We knew and we saw very early on that they had that capability to go lead. But I always believe that the best players are always the best listeners and the ones who want to be coached. So identifying that early on your team, who wants to be coached and who wants to be led, is really important. But the second piece is how do you appeal to them, similar to how my coaches appealed to me to say, be patient. I'm going to put you on the JV team, but you're going to play every minute and you're going to get better. And if you use that to your advantage, you're going to come back next year and maybe be a starter or be one of the best players on the team. And it takes a lot to be able to do that, but that's what I've followed all the way through my career.
I love that. Best players are always the best listeners and want to be coached. Next year, you set the stage. Navy goes 13-1 in the conference, makes this great run in March Madness, make it all the way to the Elite Eight, and then that dreaded former Army coach, Mike Krzyzewski, with his Duke team, happens to be able to knock you guys out. I know ultimately you developed quite the relationship with Coach K, but tell me about that year, maybe a lesson or something from the way that team gelled that you learned.
Our coach, Paul Evans, saw something in us that I I think we thought we could be good. When we walked into our locker room to start our junior year and go undefeated at home, win the Colonial Athletic Association, and the third goal was national champions. I remember that in September, walking in the locker room going, wow, right? The Service Academy national champions. None of us saw that. And he knew that this team could be special. Once we got to mid January, even though we had thousands of miles under our belt, through that time, we started to actually believe in ourselves in a way that we were going to be ready as we got through the conference and went into the NCAA tournament. Getting the draw that we had to actually play Tulsa in the first round at Syracuse and then play Syracuse again at Syracuse, we were a little disappointed from the draw and disrespected.
Oh, yeah.
We felt pretty disrespected at that point, and I think all that fueled our energy for what that incredible run in March turned out to be.
Important as you're telling that story, you hear there's this moment when the team believes and you see it on the board, it looks crazy. But at a certain stage, you start thinking, hey, maybe we are a little bit more special than we even thought of ourselves. What creates that moment there, that tipping point moment?
Well, I think this is a moment where your coach has to stop telling you what to do and where to go, where the game is just, I'll use the word melodious.
Mm,
It just flows. And I thought we really played well in our conference tournament. Our first round game against Tulsa, we did extraordinarily well. But leading up to playing Syracuse on St. Patrick's Day in Syracuse at home after they had already beaten us, there was a calmness about how we approached that game. And then when that game started, Don, it's shocking. It was really never close.
wow.
Pearl Washington and Raphael Addison and Trish and Ronnie Cycli, playing a bunch of guys from the Naval Academy. We believed we could outrun them, outplay them. And all of a sudden, while our coach was coaching, it was like you couldn't hear him.
Mm,
It was like taking your training wheels off a bicycle. It's like, I'm doing this. I'm really riding this. And we really are a top 20 program today. After the game, I remember getting on the bus. It was so surreal coming back to the Naval Academy, and we had this incredible rally where 4,000 mids carried us off our bus to do a pep rally late on a Sunday night. So surreal. I'm at a service academy, right? We're going to the Sweet 16 in the NCAA tournament.
yep.
Maybe Navy's not just a football school, it's a basketball school too.
Yeah.
What happened was we stopped having to listen to our coaches as much and we started believing in each other. In business, you can get everybody playing together as one team. They're not relying on me to give direction, but they're working together and playing together in a way that they trust one another, they have each other's back. It's building that camaraderie and team where the coach doesn't have to be in the room or be coaching, but the team knows exactly what to do and what everybody's role on that team, and they're willing to sacrifice individual goals, play for the name on the front of the jersey, not the name on the back of the jersey.
Wow.
That's when you realize you've achieved that in the business world as well.
Yeah. That's such a great lesson. And what a great way to transcend what you learned there and how you've used it as a leader throughout. You've such great respect for Mike Krzyzewski. You even have said that after your father's passing, he was great source of inspiration for you. How did that relationship develop?
Yeah, so he's really special, and he's been special to me for a long, long time. He'll tell you what he told his players when they played against Navy. He better not lose to Annapolis or the Naval Academy to get to his first Final Four. But after the game, we were in tears. It's like everything, right? You're in the Elite Eight, you just lost, you had an incredible season. You know that this moment, it was a moment. He came into the locker room and he said, I want all of you to look at me. What you've achieved as a service academy, as a basketball team, as a group will never be equaled, nor will ever be accomplished. What you've done is set the bar so high that no one that ever goes to a service academy that plays the game of basketball will ever be able to achieve it.
Wow.
I want everybody here to appreciate this moment. And I'm so thankful, and I'm thankful for your service. And it was just one of those moments where you just kind of pause and you're like, okay, really? Coach Krzyzewski? He wasn't even, he was big, but he wasn't that big.
He wasn't Coach K. Yeah, he was just Coach Little K back then, not Big K.
And the fact that he had the sense of purpose and the appreciation and respect to come in and do that for us, incredible. So on my first ship where we were deployed several years later, I just wrote him a letter
Mm.
and told him how much that moment meant to me, both as the player, as an athlete, and as a leader. And Coach K penned me a note back. We stayed in touch. We wrote letters. And when my oldest son, Jacob, was 7 years old, Duke basketball camp, you had to be 9 years old to go to Duke basketball camp. So I wrote Coach K a letter and said, I'd really love Jacob to come to Duke basketball camp. He's only 7, but he's old enough. He's very mature. If there's any way we can let him in, he'll be ready to come. And Coach K said, I'm only going to let him come at 7 is if you take a week vacation and you come be one of our coaches.
Oh.
You'll get to stay with Jacob in his dorm room and you guys can come together. That started what became a 15-year run where at one point I had all 3 going to camp with me and I was a camp coach, but for 15 plus years straight, I would take a week's vacation from whatever job I was on. And my sons and I would pack up and go to Duke basketball camp. And they would go to camp and I would have my clipboard and I'd get a chance to spend time with Coach K and listen to everything that he said and be one of the coaches at camp. And through that process of summer basketball camps in Cameron Indoor, Coach K and I became not only dear friends, but I began to rely on him for just some incredible wisdom and mentorship along the way. And he never let me forget that I was a Navy guy and that I was a guest of his as an Army guy. And he always found a way to make a joke or two about beating Navy in the Elite Eight and those kind of things. But I've had 2 sons graduate from the Duke Business School at Fuqua.
Right.
That and the Jimmy V Foundation for Cancer Research. We're on the same team when it comes to finding a victory over cancer. So, we've been just friends. And I don't know, it's a weird thing that an Army and a Navy guy could have this kind of tie, but I'm forever thankful for it.
And I am sure, knowing the Army-Navy rivalry, that when he throws a little of that, hey, we were the ones that knocked you out, you pointed out that it wasn't Army that did it, right?
Yeah, you got it exactly right on that.
Yeah, it was not Army.
You're exactly right. But he's great.
Yeah.
And it's fun because we were able to get David Robinson also to join the V Foundation board. So I always say board meetings are really fun because David and I try to sit on both sides of them. We've got this Army guy surrounded when it comes to board meetings. We know who's in charge always.
We'll be back after this.
Your business phone service should not be complicated to set up, manage, and use. Nextiva connects your phone system with business apps, AI, and automation on a single platform to run your business. With their easy-to-use dashboard, you will be able to connect with your team and customers all in one place. Nextiva, powering communication across the Pac-12 and now the Corporate Competitor Podcast.
Welcome back to Corporate Competitor Podcast. Now, I know all 3 of your sons played basketball.
Yeah.
Jacob followed your footsteps, played at Navy.
Yeah.
What about leadership and skill development were you able to teach or share with your sons as they progressed in basketball through your experience?
Yeah, so it was fun, and I got to coach my oldest son Jacob's team. We founded an AAU program in Richmond when I was at Circuit City, Team Richmond AAU that had about 200 plus kids in it. It was really my passion to be able to coach my sons, and along the way, I took chess team, my middle son, to a couple national tournaments at 9, 10, 11, and 12. So literally, Don, I basically tried to instill the same things my father had instilled in me, is that success in basketball is all about the fundamentals before trick plays. As my boys would say, the amount of times we spent on just getting the fundamentals right, whether it's a mic and drill, shooting free throws, or whether it's how we block out, the difference between an outside pivot and an inside pivot, and all those things.
Right.
Sustained success starts with fundamentals. And that's where I wanted all 3 of them to recognize that what you learn on a basketball court or any sport or any instrument translates into life because you start with the fundamentals. Whenever you go to a new industry or a new business, if you just focus on the fundamentals in that first 6 months to 12 months, you're going to be able to be successful. But you got to start there.
Fundamentals before trick plays. I love it. Your father, what a wise man.
He was.
So, in addition to the Naval Academy, you have degrees from Harvard, Stanford, and Vanderbilt. By the way, all four of those are schools that I would have gone to if Ball State had not accepted me. But, and then you have 2 decades of C-suite experience, Home Depot, 24-hour fitness, USAA, AutoNation, and now Keller Williams, parent holding company KWX. So when you say what you just said, the importance is learning the fundamentals. What strikes me about your career, right, this amazing career you've lived, is that this is not linear in any way. You've taken leadership roles in spaces that could not be more disparate. In your experience, you know what it takes to build a team. What are the elements that it takes to take a collection of people and actually get them all to cross that bridge together as a team?
Well, look, I'm thankful. I've worked for a lot of great leaders and played for a lot of great coaches and had a privilege to learn from some of the best. Admiral Mike Mullen, who was chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff,
Yeah.
legendary, used to talk to us about every leader as you go to a new command or a new company. You should focus on three things. First, listen. Go out and ask great questions, find people and listen first. If you've done that, then you're going to be prepared to listen and then learn.
Mm.
Listen, learn, then it's time to lead. Once you've listened, once you've learned, then it's time to lead. I remember generously going through the Naval Academy of thinking about that when I got to my first ship. I was a supply officer. I'm paying the crew, laundry, ships, parts. We were an oiler. We had 10 million gallons of fuel on board and just making sure the ship completes its mission. You're 23 years old and you just graduated from Annapolis and I'm in the middle of the Mediterranean. I tried to get the moment right, but I didn't know what it meant to lead 50 plus enlisted sailors on a ship that's forward deployed in the Mediterranean. So we were fortunate enough to have a master chief on our vessel, Master Chief Sherman. He had spent 48 years in the Navy. And every morning he'd walk the forecastle of the ship about 4:15. So every morning I used to get up, go out and walk with Master Chief Boatswain's Mate Sherman. We'd start at the forecastle at the front part and the bow of the ship, and we'd walk all the way to the fantail, spend about an hour, and I'd just walk next to him. And he taught me how to be an officer, how to be a leader, how to lead 19, 20, 21-year-old sailors who many of them were in the Navy because they had to go to jail or they had to join the service. And Master Chief Boatswain's Mate taught me that if you take the time to learn from others and you're willing to admit that you don't know everything just because you wear a shiny class ring from a service academy, that was the most important part of being a servant leader.
Yeah.
Master Chief Sherman had a son and a daughter that had already retired from being senior chiefs in the Navy, and he was still in. So literally, he had the bars up both sides for years of service on his uniform, and we decommissioned the ship together.
Mm.
And I'll never forget him. And just the fact that he would spend that much time with a 23-year-old naval officer that was still learning his job to teach him how leadership is done.
So, handful of really amazing lessons there, but one of them is the willingness. I mean, you have an officer's title, the status of it. But first off, you recognize there's an awful lot to be learned from a master chief.
Yeah.
So you sought it out, then you walked the ship and you did it every day, and then were willing to listen, learn, and lead.
Yeah.
I love that. What powerful examples and lessons that is. Forget the verticals, right? You can carry that into any line of work and be a better leader as a result.
Yeah. Thank you. It's what's attracted me here to Keller Williams because I get to work for Gary Keller, a legend, and I get to learn from him. We had lots of conversations about that you've got to be patient with me. I don't know real estate. My mother was a realtor, and I've done commercial real estate. I've done all the financial services. I've done all the things you've already mentioned, but I'm a novice. So, I'm naturally attracted to what I think are great coaches, great teachers, people who want to make me better. Part of the fun about getting out of bed every morning is learning something new and working for somebody that's going to teach you and wants to teach you and be a part of that. I feel extraordinarily thankful to be a part of it.
Yep. I had a chance many years ago to work with Coach Wood, and he actually had a line. He said to me one time, he said, "The day you stop learning is the day you die.
Oh,
If you figured out, I don't need any more today, I'm good, I'm just going to sit where I am, then just it's over."
yeah. It's funny you bring up John Wooden. He's a Hoosier, but he's a Purdue guy, so we respect him. But I remember I was happened to be in SoCal, and as you know, he lived in Encino,
And Cena,
and I wrote him a letter and said, I have the Pyramid of Success on my wall. Can I bring it? Would you be willing to sign it for me? And I'll bring my wooden book. And I'll never forget. I walked into his house. I think I was 25, 26. And he set me down and told me about his wife. And he signed my Pyramid of Success. He signed my book. And
yeah.
how does that happen, right? It's like I look back at that and I'm just like, did I appreciate that moment enough? And all it did was I sat down and I penned him a letter.
Mhm.
Of course, that's the kind of human that he was. Similar to my Coach K story, you know it because you've met him. What an incredibly wise person.
And humble.
Oh my God.
Everywhere we went, every time we went to a restaurant,
Oh,
he always found something kind to say to a waitress. Same
oh,
restaurant every day. Vips, the morning little restaurant, then he had the same little evening restaurant. Same thing said to him every day. Same waitress, and he would say, "You know what? Your hair looks different today. I don't know what it is, but it has a special glow." And you would just watch this woman light up, and you're thinking, "That's John Wooden. Like, how
I know.
cool is that?" He doesn't have to say a word.
I know.
That's what attracts us to people.
Yes.
People who are willing to put themselves in that, as you said, the servant role.
Yeah.
You know, we learned that a disproportionate number of Fortune 500 executives, and you mentioned you have 13 of them in your little history book there, were actively engaged in sports at either the high school or collegiate level. And I know you've worked with a number of other great ones, right? On the V Foundation, you got Jay Billis. I mean, he loves to be called great at anything because he's Jay Billis. James Spataro at ESPN and Disney, and
Yeah.
obviously your buddy David
Yep.
Robinson. Would you agree that there are factors, things that you learned from that journey that have made you better along the second journey of your life as a leader?
Oh my goodness. Sports for me taught me how to fail.
Mm,
I had a great coach my freshman year at the Naval Academy on the JV team, Hank Kuzma. His point for us was never make two mistakes in a row. I remember it so vividly because it was so simple. You're always going to have a turnover. You're going to miss a shot. You're going to make a mistake. That's the first mistake. Your second mistake is when you look over to your mom or your dad or your coach, or you put your head down, hustle back and make a play on defense. That's how you avoid making two mistakes in a row. No matter what, when you play the game, you're going to trip, you're going to fall, things are going to happen. And the same in corporate America. It always resonated with me that, okay, I don't like the outcome of that. How I respond to that outcome, though, determines whether I make two mistakes in a row. Do I put my head down? Do I feel sorry for myself? Do I complain? Do I whine? Do I say it wasn't my fault? Or do I step back in and I go back to work and hustle back and make a play?
mm.
Sports are a really great teacher for that. If you play the game, you're going to miss a shot. The question is, does that affect your next shot? And the same way, I make 1,000 mistakes a day as a CEO. We all do. The question really is, am I surrounded with enough people that are going to help my mistakes be minimized? And am I willing to say, oh, yeah, that was a mistake. Now let's go do this. Sports taught me it was okay not to be perfect all the time. When you're a high achiever, you want perfect all the time. And sports taught me it was okay not to be perfect.
Wow, that is really well put. If we want to do whatever we want to do at the highest level, there are going to be places we're going to step out of a comfort zone. You've done it multiple times.
Mhm.
In that process, mistakes will be made. What do you do? Do you go next play or do you get stuck in the moment?
Yeah, there you go.
Right. In a recent interview, you talked about displaying leadership through multiple crises, which included encouraging employees of Circuit City in the New York area after 9/11,
Mhm.
working with the Home Depot employees of yours in New Orleans after Katrina, the 24-hour fitness franchisees after the recession in 2008. Right now at KWX, right? The pandemic has changed the real estate market.
Right.
How will you use the experiences of the past to make you better in leading this group of folks through this new situation?
Well, it's really fascinating as you look at the last year, things are starting to feel better.
Right.
We're optimistic. Things are reopening. But I look at so much creativity that went on between last March and this March. And what I encourage is in crisis, it's an incredible moment to, I call rapid prototype, which means take risks and fail fast because you have so much permission to make mistakes. And your only mistake in those kind of situations is not taking the opportunity to make a mistake.
Wow, that's strong.
Yeah, one of the crises you mentioned is now in the housing crisis that we don't have enough inventory is how creatively can my client win this sale when there's 10 bids? So as I think about our agents, we serve our agents. My job is either serve our agents or serve those who serve our agents. And,
Right.
we've got 170,000 plus worldwide now. So many of our agents were so creative about, well, how do you do an open house during a pandemic? How do you do this? How do you take a listing? How do you go manage all this? How do I work virtually? What does that look like? In Austin, we have less than 5 days of inventory on the MLS.
That's crazy.
Yeah, no, it's our home turf. We got to win Austin, right?
Right.
But I say this is I want our agents to be extraordinarily creative during times like this because that's what's going to allow them to win for their clients. My job, though, as a leader, is not to have the ideas, Don. It's to encourage. It's okay to take that shot. Try. It's okay to fail because rarely in life do you learn by studying something. You learn by doing it, failing, and then reapplying what you've learned. If you want to learn how to be a shooter, you can read a book for a couple days, or you can just go out and start shooting and miss and then make some adjustments on that.
Yep.
During moments like this, people like to step back and study it. And I'm like, what do you really want to do? Well, I'd really like to try this. You have my permission to go try that. This is a beautiful time to try new things. And some of this stuff will stick. Some of it will never go back to the way it was. And as a leader, you got to be okay, though, when there's a mistake or two along the way and just encourage you to get back in the game and keep putting it up.
I love it. So you've been able to use this year to encourage this risk taking and maybe making a mistake or two.
Mhm.
How do you keep that? If normal returns, whatever normal returns to, how do you keep that spirit in that direction?
So my style or my strategy is to celebrate the heck out of it. One of the things we brought to Keller Williams is every meeting before we start the meeting, we start with a mission moment, with a story of something we did with one of our agents, something we might have done in our mortgage company, something we had done in a market center. But this idea of this is a mission moment and celebrating what we do and why we do it, as opposed to let's just get into the P&L. Let's start with the Excel spreadsheet. Let's go through it. No, let's start with why we're here and what we do. To pause for a moment and say, how does what we do every day affect with our core beliefs? And then how does it make an impact? And the ability to actually even talk about what it's like and how that works and share best practices. That's something I've practiced since I was an early leader at Circuit City. Just let's stop. Let's talk about what we do today. We're here to serve people and to make their lives better. Tell me about a customer you took care of yesterday and tell me about what you learned about that.
Mm, wow.
So we try to start with a mission moment in each and every meeting that ground us and remind us of what we do and why we do it before we start any of the business stuff. And surprisingly, it makes it okay for people to share some of these crazy things that they've been trying to help their clients. Everything from writing letters and having families writing letters to clients that are doing YouTube videos and sending them to the sellers, all those things that people are trying to get a creative edge. And I'm just going, this is fantastic. It's showing ingenuity and creativity. And it's how do you get an edge in life and how do you get an edge for your clients? And what we want are our agents doing everything they can to help their clients.
Wow. Mission moments,
Yeah.
it's very Coach K of you. I'm sure you probably know he does feel it moments is what he calls
Yes.
them with his players and his teams. So I read an article in which you talked about advice from your father. You quoted him as saying, in order to be better, you have to have better people around you. Coach Wood used to talk to me about it all the time. Who's in your inner circle? You'll never outperform that circle.
Yeah.
How do you intentionally work on your inner circle?
It's a work in process. First and foremost in my inner circle is my wife, Amy. She always says, never marry somebody you don't want to be in a foxhole with. Because when you're in a foxhole, you don't always get to take a bath. You're not always in a good mood, but you have to live with each other. You face each other during difficult times and in great times. So my inner circle starts with her. And after being a next door neighbor growing up and all the career moves we've made together, she's clearly on that inner circle. We've already talked about Coach K, but one of my next level best friends is R.C. Buford, head of the San Antonio Spurs now.
Oh.
And he's just one of those guys where we might talk 5 or 6 times a week on various things. Now that he's a CEO and not a general manager, we get to talk about CEO stuff, which is really, really fun for me. And in the middle of that, I get to talk to him about basketball stuff and hear about the Spurs. He's one of those folks that I sought out and nurtured that formed a relationship. My professors at Stanford that I still call for advice and spend time with. My Sunday school teacher at the Naval Academy who went on to lead the Stockdale Center, Art Athens, and start up the Center for Leadership and Ethics there at the Naval Academy. He retired as a colonel. He was a White House fellow, worked in the Reagan White House. He and I spend an hour together every month.
No kidding.
Yeah, a monthly 1-hour call, just talking about being a leader and talking through my challenges and what I'm bringing on and providing great wisdom to me. My dad inspired me to always have these folks around that I could always learn from and that I could always trust and I could spend time with and I could share how I feel about things along the way. It's just been one of those Haley's Comet like things through my career where when you start to think about all the folks that I consider just incredible advisors, I'm talking people that I love, to have them in my corner, I'm forever blessed. My dad looks down and I think he's got to be proud of it. Like, well, good. He listened to me on 1 or 2 things that I gave to him.
Well, Carl Liebert, I could listen to you all day long and channel your father as often as we can. Your life journey has been incredible. The things you've shared with us today, really powerful. I've taken 4 pages of notes already. Thank you very much. I also think the title of your book, when you get ready to write it, is Never Marry Anyone You Don't Want to Be in a Foxhole With. You steal that straight from your wife, but make it the title of your book.
Yeah.
But I just have to tell you, just powerful lessons, so genuinely shared. I can't thank you enough for joining us today and being a corporate competitor.
Well, I'm honored to be here. And Douglas Adams would say, I seldom went to where I wanted to go, but always somehow ended up where I needed to be. I'm a testament of that growing up in Floyd Knobs, Indiana, and I had a lot of help. So I just want to say thanks for asking me to come on board and be with you today, and genuinely thankful.
Carl said the best in the business are always the best listeners and want to be coached. It would be easy to pinpoint someone on your team that needs to work on this, but I'm asking you, are you a good listener? Do you listen with the intent to understand or the intent to respond? How do you take feedback? Are you defensive or do you thank your critic? The answers to these questions will impact your long-term success. If you could share one habit, one thing you've done consistently that allowed you to separate yourself from your competitors, what would it be? In my 30-year career, 2,500 of the greatest athletes, coaches, and leaders answered that question for me.
This is Don Yeager, who did that article I was telling you about.
Don, Dave Sims with Coach K. How you doing?
Hey, Don. How you doing, my man? Great, sir.
What they gave to me is what I'm giving to you in my online course, Journey to Greatness. Through engaging storytelling and on-demand videos, you will learn the 16 habits that will jumpstart your personal growth. I will instruct you on how to apply these winning characteristics to your life through custom workbook exercises. We are slashing the price for our podcast listeners. Lifetime access to Journey to Greatness is normally $399, but for our podcast listeners, it will be $49 with the code podcast at checkout. Click the banner on corporatecompetitorpodcast.com to enroll. Thanks for listening to the show. I would be so grateful if you left us a rating and a review. We will be rolling out a new episode every Wednesday. To be the first to listen, subscribe to the podcast on our website, corporatecompetitorpodcast.com. Plus, as a thank you gift, you will receive a free chapter from one of my best-selling books on the habits of high-performing teams. Stay in touch by connecting with me on social media at Don Yeager, Yaeger, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Until next week, I appreciate you.